Fuck the posers. Fuck the PC. Fuck the cancel culture. Fuck it all.
Welcome to the Riff Crew. I'm your host, Steve Mitchell, back for another big episode here in the realm. And joining me, as always, is the man with the stars, not just in his eyes, but on his scarf. Skull, how you doing, mate?
That's right. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen in Cyberland. As you know, this is Skull broadcasting from the past, present, and future in the Chamber of the Cosmos. Here with my good friend Steve Oz from Ozland. I'm an on-again, off-again DC bomb rock band Black Manta. Been in the scene for over 35 years. I know people from all over the scene. I also worked at the Smithsonian for 20 years, and so I've incorporated my love and passion for history with my love and passion for music. As usual, really excited to be here. And we have a very special guest with us here today. It's a real honor to have us with us again. One of the godfathers of the fantasy genre. He's also a lyricist and member of Hawkwind and Blue Oyster Cult and creator of Elric and Eternal Champion Multiverse, Mr. Michael Moorcock. It's good to have you with us again today.
Good to be here. Nice to see you again.
Excellent. It's a segment now that we've been calling the Eternal Tales of Michael Moorcock. So it's good to have you back.
Yeah, it's always nice to see you. Yeah, I enjoy it.
Excellent. I always just like to give like a little introduction to anybody out there that's paying attention or watching. There's just a little reminder here that Michael Moorcock, Mr. Moorcock, is one of my literary heroes, many people's literary heroes, and also one of the grandmasters of the fantasy genre. You were there from the very beginning, at the very birth of the genre, essentially, and you've influenced generations of fantasy writers, of filmmakers, comic books, role-playing games for almost 60 years now. But you're also a huge fan of music, so we love to talk about music as well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess right off the bat, do you have any updates on the Spirits Burning album?
Not really, no. It's out and people seem to be, or those people who like it seem to like it.
I got those
But
right
I'm not
here.
sure. Yeah, I'm
Just-
not sure when the fourth one is coming out, but
yeah.
that'll be the last one. And um, I think Don Falcon, who is really the force behind Spirits Burning, has just
Hmm.
written a long memoir about his experiences with both that label and a lot of music as well, different music as well. I forget what the title is. It's something like Burning Spirits, or the story behind Spirits Burning, something like that. Anyway, it's a good
Right.
book. It's very readable. I don't really read many music books, rock and roll books at all. I generally tend to get irritable with them, I think. But this one's very good, and I enjoy it. I also enjoyed Lemmy's book, by the way. There are two books that I really like, rock and roll books. One is Lemmy's. I forget what Lemmy's is called, but there's
Well, that's
also
funny because you're actually reading my mind
oh
because I just I just read this.
oh
It was one
great,
of those, yeah, it was one of those books that I was waiting for the right time to read it, and the stars aligned, and I finally was able to sit down and really like immerse myself into it.
yeah,
And I wanted to chat about this a little bit, but it's funny that you said that you read
yeah,
this book in specific.
yeah.
Um,
I was actually talking a couple of days ago with an old friend of mine who's actually or claims to be dying. I think he's just being melodramatic, but he claims to be dying, and so he's I've been talking to him quite a bit, and he and I went down to Middle Earth many years ago when we knew with a guy who wanted to play bass with Hawkwind, and he'd heard that Hawkwind needed a new bass player. So we went down with him to Middle Earth, which at that time had been closed by the cops. I mean, it was just no, it wasn't working anymore. But it was used as rehearsal rooms,
hmm.
and we went down there anyway, and Lemmy had already got the job. I mean, he was already in. I mean, it didn't take any time at all, a few seconds really for him to get to be there. So Curtis, the other bass player, was a bit pissed off that he. But anyway, but John, my friend, didn't remember going down there, and yet he was a friend of Lemmy's. I mean, he probably drank with Lemmy more than I did, being a wastrel and spending more time in pubs. So I was surprised. I said, remember that time we went down the Middle Earth? I've just been writing about it, which I have in my new book. And he said, no. And I guess that's the 60s.
Right.
Yeah, but yeah, and Lemmy became very friend with me almost immediately. One, he read my books because Lemmy was a great reader, and is far more literate than he ever let on. He both read and wrote pretty well, and he kind of cozied up to me that night. I wasn't sure, exactly why, except that he liked my books. But I mean, a lot of people did. And I wasn't used, I tended to minimize that. And it turned out that he heard that I was a speed freak and had a lot of speed going, which I didn't. I mean, all I had was my mother-in-law of the time had actually given me a bunch of speed, which I wasn't using. But I don't know how Lemmy heard this. I think he heard it from Simon, the then drummer. But anyway, so I suddenly had this very close friend with Lemmy. And eventually I remember we were actually driving off to go to a gig sometime. We were in the bus, and I had to stop the bus and go into my place in Ladbroke Grove. It wasn't very far anyway from the Mountain Grill, and get this little box of speed that my mother-in-law had given me. God knows why. I mean, we used to get Purple Hearts off her as well. Her doctor gave her all kinds of stuff that she didn't want. And she didn't know anything about, she had these things, I don't know, some sort of amphetamine. I don't want that, Anyway, and got them and got back on the bus and gave them to Lemmy, who's very grateful.
Well, he had like an internal like sensor radar for that kind of stuff, I guess. He
sort of did, yeah. But he's a nice guy. I mean, I liked him a lot. There's John was talking about a time when he and Mick Farren. I don't know if you know Mick Farren. He's a science fiction writer, and he was with the.
You're also reading my mind because there's another book that I read about the Deviants, and we're going to chat about that.
Right.
For a bit.
Yeah. Oh, good. Well, this wasn't a very good story. This was about. Apparently, Lemmy and Mick Farren started a fight at the Henniker's pub where I used to drink a lot with my with everybody I knew, really, because it had a good beer garden at the back, and I could take my kids up there, and they could they could run about in the beer garden and secretly drink beer, Lemmy and Mick apparently started a bad fight, which nobody approved of, throwing glasses and bottles at the staff. They started
it amongst themselves or against?
No, that was the thing. I mean, if it had been amongst themselves, it would have been fair enough. But attacking the staff seemed it just seemed not the thing to do. But anyway, Lemmy went up there later, I think, a couple of days later, and apologized to Tom, the owner of the pub, who had actually been very good to Lemmy and continued to be very good to Lemmy, sort of lending him money and giving him credit and stuff. Because even when Lemmy was pretty much famous in Motorhead. He still wasn't getting any money. We both had the same manager, and we would frequently meet in the offices of the manager for the same reasons, trying to get paid. And anyway, but Lemmy never really had any dough. I mean, for a long time. I mean, later on he was fine, but and Tom tended to lend him money and look after him and so on. And he also drank at another pub. I mean, this is a long time ago now. These are very, very upper class pubs now in the area, because the area has just become totally changed. It's gentrified beyond sanity. And even the name of the pub, the old Princess Alexandra, where the Angels used to drink and where Lemmy used to drink, were both. They even changed
For all
their
the people
name.
out there, when you say angels, you're not talking about angels in heaven. You're talking about the Hell's Angels.
Hell's Angels. Yeah, some of whom are
wanted to
all right,
elaborate that.
Yeah. I mean, I knew some of them, and they were all right. You know, they were fine. I mean, I didn't have any problems with them, but that's where they drank. And now it's all solicitors and stockbrokers and
Sure.
members of parliament and God knows what. It's
Yuppies.
really gone downhill. Yeah.
Well,
So
I wanted to say real quick, there was a couple of things that I really got from Lemmy's book that kind of blew my mind a little bit. And one of them is, now everyone, kind of suspected this, but I've never really heard anybody say this, but he said that the name Hawkwind actually came from the Hawk Moon series. Is that something you've heard?
Yeah, I mean, that's Dave, as you know, has also gone very respectable and has sort of changed the history a bit. I mean, this happens quite a bit in the way of things with people. Some people try to, cling on to the truth as best they can, and some people just make up new stuff that sounds better to them anyway. And originally, it was largely called Hawkwind because of after Hawk Moon, but they also would say to members of the press that it was because of Nicky's hawking and farting, Hawk Wind,
right.
And I think, and since then it's become rather more respectable, I think, than that. But because now Hawkwind, which is only Dave really now, we're doing the Albert Hall and all the posh people's gigs, so they're no longer the band that they were. Dave fired all the last of the old band members and.
Well, yeah, and there was one other thing in here. They were like kind of right next to each other, and I read something in here that was so funny that I almost peed myself. I have to be honest. So it's very short, but I wanted to read it to you real quick. It says here, he says we'd hang out with Michael Moorcock occasionally. The name was inspired by him. He was great. We'd go around his house for some free food now and again, and he would have a notice on the door, and it said, "If I don't answer the first ring of the bell, don't ring it again, or I'll come and kill you."
Well, there were variations of that, yeah. Some of them were more polite than that. They just said, "I'm working, please go away."
Right.
It
says no means no. F off everybody, leave me alone. Anyway, I thought he said it was hilarious, and I just thought it's like a funny thing to mention there.
Well, I remember that now, because I read that book and liked it a lot. And as I said, it's certainly more truthful than almost any other rock and roll book that I've read, and there's only one other that I really liked, and that's Ian McClacken, Mac, of the Small Faces, who played with lot of people, Bonnie Riot, Bob Dylan, the Stones, and so on. I mean, he played with organ. And
Okay.
Mac, I knew Mac well. I mean, he was probably my last good friend around these parts. He lived over in another suburb of Austin, not the same one, but his wife worked here, and she was really nice, Kim, and she was killed in a car accident. Just a normal thing. She just got hit by a truck as she was turning out from her, from a little side road, and she and Linda got on very well. We all got on very well. I mean, we had the same. We were from the same period, and had a lot of the same enthusiasms, and had gone down to the same, venues when we were younger, and drank at the same bars. So it was for me. I mean, apart from just the tragedy of Mac dying, because it was a terrible death. He had a heart attack, and he was on his own by then because Kim had been killed, and he was just getting ready to go. He used to do a tour with Billy Bragg every year in England, and he was just getting ready to go on that tour. And nobody heard from him, and wondered what had happened. And by the time it was about 2 days after it had happened to him, he was gone. So it was that one. But the book is again very, very, very authentic. It has real authenticity, and was written by Mac, just as Lemmy's book was written by Lemmy. I mean, Lemmy could write well. I don't know if he had any help. But
it's great, yeah.
He didn't appear to have. I mean, I don't remember him saying he had.
Well, I wanted to. Huh?
We used to correspond, me and Lemmy.
You still right?
By
Okay.
email, yeah.
Oh, okay.
By that time, he was living in the States.
Well, the reason I laughed so hard when I read that about the Sime is it immediately reminded me of Samuel Taylor Coleridge when he was writing Xanadu, and he was on some opiate high, and he got distracted by somebody in the middle
from Porlock,
this epic poem, and he went back to write it, and he forgot.
Yeah, right. I mean, that does happen, and he really was, as far as I can tell, just from the poem. He was really, really moving it. He was in a groove, and and then the person from Porlock, who nobody knows who that was, turned up and distracted him, and poor old Coleridge never finished the poem.
He never finished it. Well, yeah. I guess we can. The other question I have here, it's funny you mentioned that. Like I said, it's a bit of cosmic synchronicity, but I've just recently read this, and we'll talk about it next time too, because I'm currently reading Mick Farron's "Give That Anarchist a Cigarette."
Oh,
and
yeah.
We'll talk about that next time. But the funny thing about this, like it talks about, mentioned a couple of times, it talks about the Middle Earth Club and the UFO Club and all that, and how very incestuous the Ladbroke scene was, like musically and artistically, was kind of like their version of Haight-Ashbury. It's just really insightful, great book. One of the things that it says specifically is that one of the guys talks about how the Deviants and the Pink Fairies to him were kind of like a twisted tribe of Jerry Cornelius vagabonds, and the same thing with Hawkwind. And so that was just kind of a funny. I don't know if you ever got to see the Deviants, or you knew Mick Farron or any of those guys.
Yeah, I mean, I knew Mick, and we frequently played with the Fairies, on different occasions. I remember one time we played, of all places, the Wigmore. Was it the Wigmore Hall? Yes, it was the Wigmore Hall, which is normally, classical music. But for some reason, we had a gig there. I never heard how we got this gig, but we had a gig. And the Deviants, no, the Fairies and Hawkwind were playing together, really. And I forget who it was, but somebody wanted us to turn our sound down, and we couldn't turn our sound down without disappointing the audience anyway, and so we didn't, and the cops were called, and suddenly all these cops were all over the place, and I wasn't on stage at that time. We went on playing. That's right. We went on playing as much as we could because they cut the power off, which frequently happened in those days when somebody didn't want you to go on playing. And so we just had Simon, I think, drumming, and we may have had two drummers. I can't remember. And just going at it, and suddenly all these burly officers of the law were all over the place, and we still went on playing. And and they were trying to be friendly or appear friendly, these cops. But I got a real sense of what they were really like when I overheard one of them saying to another one, "If I had my way, I'd put them all up against the wall and shoot them." So we had I got a very clear idea of what these genial bobbies were really all about. And that was probably the most memorable time I was ever on stage with them. And then we had when Portobello Green, as it came to be called, which is a bit of wasteland under the motorway before that, where we used to put on gigs. And I did quite a lot of gigs there. It was supposed to be Arthur Brown, Arthur Brown, guy, God, he played with, was it Love? One of those single names.
Arthur Lee?
No, it was, he was the son of an actor. I just forget his name. He died of a heart attack on a plane, I think, going to the States. Anyway, it was him and me and my friend
Paul
John.
Paul
Sorry?
Kossoff?
Kossoff, that's right. Yeah, Paul Kossoff. And before we ever started,
they talk about it in here.
Oh yeah. And before we ever started, Kossoff had collapsed behind the speakers. He was completely out of it, and just he and his guitar just sort of fell down.
He was in.
Arthur Brown couldn't get his hat to light. He wanted to get his hat. He used to have his hat to light, and he couldn't get it to light. So he was spending more time trying to light his hat than he was playing. And in the end, the only two people left standing were me and John Trucks. And John Trucks could barely play a guitar. I mean, we just roped him in, for the fun of it. And I was playing banjo, of all things, just because, I thought, well, I'll play banjo. And very few people played banjo because of the old story, what was the difference between a pig and a banjo player found in the street. And the answer was the pig had been on his way to a gig. But I actually played banjo on Calvert's album for what's his name? The guy, the guy who produced Lucky Leaf, Brian Eno, and Eno wanted a banjo player for one of his pieces, and so I had a banjo. So I went home. The studio was very close. I went home and got the banjo, and so I hadn't played it for a long time, and the strings were all dead. So I said to give us a moment, because I need to change the strings. He said, "No, don't change the strings." So there's this strangely flat strings banjo playing on Calvert's Lucky Leaf on a couple of tracks, I think. But anyway, so I had this banjo, and there were a bunch, the audience was probably as out of it as we were, because we got up on the stage, trucks fell over, but kept on playing, I think. But I actually fell straight down, because the stage was it's a fairly rickety stage to be put up just for the occasion. And I actually fell through the stage. And nothing got broken, the banjo was fine, everything. I climbed back and started playing, and it was just me by that time playing. And there was this group of French and Italian kids who thought this was all part of it and were just applauding like crazy. They just loved it all, as if, we were really doing something great. And it was terrible. I mean, it was just totally a total mess. But that was fairly typical of the time.
It was entertaining. It was rock and roll,
I guess
right?
so, yeah, I guess so. Probably the first time banjo's been rock and roll, but anyway, there you go.
Awesome.
Actually, it's not. I've been listening to the Bob Dylan radio, Theme Time Radio Hour, which I'd never really heard much, when it was coming out. And he played a track, one of his shows, which had a banjo on it. And it was a rock and roll band with a banjo in it. Anyway, that was sort of what happened. Was we were trying as well, socially, as it were. I mean, Mick was involved in this too. As I remember Mick had a sort of very strong social conscience, and we were trying to produce this little theatre for a free theatre, for the people, the local people. And my wife at the time had done part of a mural. My friend Jim Cawthorne had done another part of a mural. There was sort of three big murals behind us. And that's where I think I first played, not played, but performed with Hawkwind, was at that little theatre. And the police were forever trying to break it up. The local residents, certain local residents, not all of them by a long shot, but there were some grumpy old retired colonels, as it were, in the distance, nowhere near where we were playing. But they just objected to it because they wanted to object to it because they didn't like the look of us.
The hippies.
Yeah, exactly. But the audience, we played on these free gigs that we were doing, which involved quite a few bands. But the free gigs we were doing, we would turn, because there wasn't enough room in the theatre for the audience that we had, we'd turn and face the audience. So the audience was sitting on the green outside and we were playing to them that way. The little theatre had seats and a stage, but it just wasn't big enough for, generally speaking, for the stuff we were doing. And that the local council, which was all Tories, and they had ideas for making money out of this. We would try to keep it free and for everybody. One night that theater mysteriously burned down, which meant that the murals went, the seats went, everything went, and we everything we tried to do, we just didn't have any money to redo it. So next time I saw it, it had become some kind of knick-knack shop, for rich bohemians, call it, I don't know, whatever it was.
Well, that's a perfect segue, because I've been meaning to ask you, so how did you come up with Sonic Attack? I mean, that to me, that is it's terrifying, it's brilliant, it's very psychedelic, it's cosmic. We and my friends, we used to recite it back in the day. How did you come up with Sonic Attack?
Well,
And
actually,
how often did you perform it?
the first time I sang it was that day. Oh, not sang it, but
Hmm.
performed it was that day. I'm talking about at the when the theatre
Wow.
was starting. Um, and what happened was, I was, certain members of the band, or not really the whole band all at once, but would come round to my place and just hang out. And one day, I think it was Dave, he said, "Why don't could you write us some material?" And I said, "Sure." So I wrote Sonic Attack. I mean, it took 5 minutes to write it.
Well, it's
And
genius.
well, I mean, I've never spent much time on anything really, except more recently, when just because I'm getting old. But he said, could you do some stuff? I did about 3 numbers, I think, and one of them was Sonic Attack. And then so he liked, he liked it, but he said, we haven't got anybody who can perform it. At that time, they didn't. And he said, would you come and perform it? So I said, sure, I didn't mind. And we decided that I'd perform it at that gig, because I'd been involved in getting the theatre going and all that shit. So that's when I performed it. But I had something wrong with one of my legs, which was shaking. And Dave thought it was because I was nervous. But in fact, what he didn't know, and what a lot of people didn't know, is that I'd actually been performing on stage since I was about 15, in skiffle groups and stuff like that. And
Right.
I was perfectly happy. I've never, as Linda will tell you, anybody wants me to perform, or, as long as I'm not too under rehearsed or whatever, I'll do it. So
The greenhorns, right?
yeah, the greenhorns, right? and also suddenly it's the belly flops, which was a record we did, a joke record we did.
Hmm.
Oh, I don't know, in 63, I think it was, we did that. Anyway, so it didn't. I was quite happy to do it, and Lemmy always thought that I was nervous. Again, he liked, what Lemmy liked to think was that I was somehow this posh person, which I was no posher any more than they were, any more or less. And he liked to think that I was this posh person who sort of somehow was nervous of playing. But in fact, Lemmy was more nervous than I was. And there's a story I tell, which I may have told you already, I don't know where. And we were doing a reunion at Hammersmith Odeon, a sort of a proper big, massive gig. And Lemmy turned up to play with the band in this sort of reunion. It was Christmas, it was just a kind of party thing. But he was so nervous of getting things wrong that Linda, who had started out saying, who he didn't know him until then, had started off saying, if that bastard says a word to me, he'll get a punch on the nose. I didn't say anything because I knew that, I didn't have to say anything. The moment Lemmy turned up, he was so charming that she was immediately charmed.
It fell under his charisma.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he was very, very good at that sort of thing with the ladies. He sort of bows, clicks his heels, kisses hands, all that stuff, and then tells about 50 jokes, which are great jokes, because he's very good at telling jokes, and but he gets this sort of panic attack. And in the end, Linda's having to calm him down and say, don't worry, you're going to be fine. Well, I don't know, I haven't played with the band for a long time. I might get it all wrong. And she's saying, no, you'll be fine. Don't worry about it. And then he gets a nosebleed. And so Linda's stuffing Kleenex up his nose to try and stop him, stop the nosebleed. And anyway, he was fine after that. But that was the irony of the thing. I never got stage fright. As long as I knew what I was supposed to be doing, I was fine, which is why I tended not to do songs with the band, because I didn't work with the band all the time, and I didn't have time to rehearse. So I rarely did songs. And even if I did songs, by the time I started to do it, the tune that I'd done, Dave had changed. So I got caught at one gig. I forget where. I forget the song too. But anyway, that particular song, I was singing it the way I'd written it. But meanwhile, David changed the tune. I think it was particularly the middle eight. And so suddenly, when we start to get into the song, I start singing it wrong. I mean, I just made a total mess of it. And on top of that, you can hear it, because that particular gig was recorded, and it's on an album. I think even an official album. I don't think it's even a bootleg album. So you can hear me just babbling, because I didn't know what the fuck was going on. As they're all singing one thing and I'm singing another, and realizing there's something gone wrong and trying to fit in with the new stuff. So it's really better for me to do stuff like Sonic Attack, where I could just I'm bad at remembering my own songs, really bad at it. Linda will tell you. I mean, I can remember some old song from the 50s, but I can't remember my own stuff. And
well, I was going to ask you. So you said some of those performances were recorded then, of your Sonic Attack performance.
Well, I don't know about Sonic Attack. That was the strange thing. I did Sonic Attack quite a lot, but there isn't, to my knowledge, any Hawkwind recording of me doing Sonic Attack, and not an official record that I know of, and I was going to do it when we did that North American performance in Austin, the last time I did anything actually. And Nikki came over, and Alan Davey was there. So we were going to do this thing, but I'd just come out of I'd had a I'd had a back operation, and I was on painkillers and pretty far out of it, but I said I'd do it, and I was actually scheduled to do it towards the end of the evening, but I said I just can't wait that long, because I'm not really up to it. And Linda was saying, you had already said, you're not going to do that, and I said, well, I'll do it, but I'll do it early on. That was the compromise. Anyway, I got out there and with Nikki, and I started to do Sonic Attack, and I forgot half the words. I thought that I'd finished the whole performance. I mean, it was just in my mind that I'd finished it. But my habit of walking off the stage after I'd done my piece, this time Nikki looks at me like, where the fuck are you going? And I didn't know why he was saying that. They were signaling that. I thought, I'm just going. What I didn't realize was I'd left out off half of Sonic Attack. So my one chance to have a really good version of Sonic Attack out there was I just buggered up myself. It's been the story of my life, really. My disappointments in my own lack of stage disciscipline.
Well, maybe you'll get another shot at it. Now, I was going to ask you how were you inspired? Like, what inspired you to write Sonic Attack, or what were you channeling at the time?
Nothing much. I just thought of it. I mean, I like, I like the band, so I wanted to do something that the band would, would be good for the band to do.
Symbolize the vibe of Hawkwind.
Yeah, it really
I
did,
got you.
and also the loudness of the band, and what we could do with that noise, and with that amount of electronics, so we
Mm,
could keep, we could slowly build it up, which
mm,
luckily, Dave Dave was really good at doing that kind of thing. I mean, one of the things about I think the best talent Dave ever had was that he knew how to maintain the sounds, to bring it down and to let it, to bring it up again. He knew when to stop, generally speaking. I mean, sometimes nobody knew when to stop because we were so out of it. But normally that's what Dave could do. He's a very good steersman, a good captain of the ship.
mm.
Nicky was a terrible captain of the ship. I mean, and that's partly what the difference between them was. Nick, I I didn't mind it, but some musicians who came and went in the band, including Dave, didn't like Nicky coming in suddenly, in a different key with his saxophone, and I can see why you get fed up with that. I mean, I've done it to people myself on occasions, and uh, um, as I say, I'm bad at remembering my own songs, and sometimes I've written a song, gone into a recording studio, and then actually not being able to get the key right. I mean, just crazy stuff like that. And
Mm.
and Nick was very similar. So frequently that was that would be a bit of a problem. But generally speaking, particularly with Dave and Lemmy, they could play naturally together. They were just, it was an
Mm.
absolute perfect,
In sync.
yeah, in sync. And they sort of knew without having to think about it what to do. So it was always the best times for me with the band were when Lemmy and Dave were playing. But anyway, what I took to doing was just having it helped often with the performance, because particularly with Sonic Attack, I could come on and have a torch which was basically shining in my face, but gave me enough light to read from Sonic Attack, and because I could never remember it. As I say, I'm just bad at remembering my own lyrics, and so I could do that, and the torch sort of lit your face up, so it gave a good dramatic effect to the when you were performing, and that's the way I do it. And I did a lot of gigs like that. I mean, essentially, I I I I got to doing fewer and fewer gigs really, because of the way, just really because it got nasty on occasions. Nick got fired twice.
Mm.
Lemmy got fired, and usually on silly, well, put it this way, Dave probably had particular ambitions for the band, and
Right.
me and Lemmy and Nicky in particular, and Terry Ellis in the early days,
Mm.
we all had a different attitude to playing. I think I've mentioned how this was true of all of us, and it's true of Dave as well. But how we would go into the same pubs as the audience were drinking in, before the gig, and we liked doing that, and it always felt right. I always went, you know, I enjoyed playing for people who were the same as me, or people I saw as being like, you know, like us. And I didn't want to be you know, a part of a big whatever they call stadium band. You know, although we did Wembley and all kinds of stuff like that, I didn't really want to be that sort of band, selling tickets at vast prices, all that, you know, all that stuff. So the more it got like that, the less pleasure it was for me to be in the band.
Right.
But as far as writing for it, I mean, the writing came naturally. I mean, all of it was all done in a few minutes. I mean, you know, I don't think there's a single song that I took more than half an hour over. And some of them, of course, Dave ripped off as well. I mean, I think we all know probably by now that Dave was not averse to pinching somebody else's lyrics if it suited him, including Bob's. So,
Sure.
it didn't matter so much to me because my main living didn't come from music. But it felt bad when I knew other people, you know, who needed the money, were not getting the money.
Well, that's a perfect segue because you mentioned it a little bit earlier, but I wanted you, if you wanted to give an update on your literary projects, the book that you've been working on.
Oh yeah, the book that I've been working on, as I probably told you, was just a load of crap. When I finished it last year.
I find that hard to believe, but
well,
you know,
well,
Linda, but
Didn't pass the
Linda
Linda
said
test.
so.
Yeah.
well, so I've been working. It's a difficult book because I'm having to reveal a lot about myself, and it's sort of exhausting. And what I was doing with the first draft was I was writing stuff, you know, that you could say was bad stuff about stuff I'd done that I wasn't happy about in my life, mostly to do with my kids and ex-wives and stuff like that. And then you'd find a piece where I was sort of arguing with myself, justifying what I'd done, and what they call virtue signaling, and it was not good. I mean, it was against everything I stand for, in fact. So that's why it was so crappy. That's really why I didn't like it. And I hope I haven't done it in the final version this time. It's taken me a while. I really got, I mean, I was having terrible dreams and got physically just totally exhausted doing this last version. But I feel all right now.
Good.
And I'm writing a few other things that I'd had to put off, you know, just short pieces that people that I'd agreed to write. So we'll see. I mean, we'll see what. Well,
you want to tell us what the title is and when it's coming out?
It's The Wounds of Albion. It's Albion. It's the third book in the Whitefriars sequence, and it's about, I would say about 40% of it is genuine autobiography. I'd say another 20.
It's semi-autobiographical then.
Yeah, well, in a way it is, but it's also the actual structure hasn't been done before. I mean, it's a new structure that, I mean, people who've read it think this too, so it isn't just me saying it. It's something that I don't think anyone's ever done before. And the other bit is lies. It's a piece of actual apparent autobiography, which has absolutely no truth in it. None of which is particularly, you know, boastful or anything like that. It's not that kind of lying. It's just that I didn't actually do some of this stuff that's in the book. It's clear enough. You can tell, I think, pretty easily. But and then the other part is a fantasy story. I mean, you know, which has highway robbers, or rather people like Dick Turpin, you know, the old 18th century stagecoach highwaymen. It's got them holding up electric trams, and these big trams, which is the only main means of public transport across the country. So the tram drivers, as you may or may not know, usually have a lever which they carry with them. They take out of the control cabin, the control board, and take it back to whoever looks after them. And so the highwaymen's or the tramwaymen's really exhortation to the driver is throw down your lever, which means they have to take out their lever and, you know, throw it away, so they can't drive the tram anymore. It won't drive, and then they rob the passengers of the tram. But it's also about British history and some, I think, fairly serious ideas. One of which is about, I mean, one of the main ideas, which at the end, which I shouldn't really be telling you, but I am, is about essentially how America has never actually left the Commonwealth, the British Commonwealth, and so it's really become more like Canada in that it doesn't have a lot of guns, you know, and stuff like that. The Indians have their own territory, which is pretty much all of the territory west of the Mississippi, you know, and I think it's west. And then black people have Louisiana and a whole chunk of territory there. So it's sort of divided up more equally between the First Nation people and the people who are enslaved and so on. And it's just a kind of ideal of what it might have been like if America hadn't won the revolution. So it's sort of it goes against the grain of a lot of American myth, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but just against the whole idea of the revolution and freedom and so on. And there's actually more freedom in this version of America than there. It suggests
I have a very small portion of American Indian in me that goes like back several generations. I'm very proud of it, but you know, it goes several generations back. But so
yeah, well,
I know what you mean.
It's just that it's a fairer division of the land than
yeah, I know.
So,
I know what happened to them. I know how they were robbed and how they were treated, and you know,
absolutely, and the Trail of Tears and all that. Yeah. I was watching TV the other day, an Antiques Roadshow, and this guy comes up with a whole bunch of Indian clothing, you know, and stuff. And it turns out that his grandmother was Cree. He was Canadian, or rather, his father was Canadian, and he was basically talking about how people were ashamed of their Indian blood at that time in the early part of the century, and now are proud of their Indian blood, because and how his grandmother was treated. I mean, they took his father and brother, the father's brother, his uncle, away from his Cree wife when he died. And as you know, there's a lot of that went on where the children were just ripped out of their parents' arms, essentially, to give them a better education. The idea was sort of crude. I mean, I think it was well-meaning on some levels, but anyway, that doesn't happen in my book. Everybody's getting along fine. And I've sort of done this before. I did it in Gloriana. I mean, a slight version of this in Gloriana, and this is in some ways is a sequel to Gloriana. Certain ideas, I've just thought them out a bit more. But that's the science fiction, if you like, part of the book. But the rest of it is a lot of it's true. I mean, I talk about going down to the Flamingo, the R&B club that we all used to go down to. This is where Mac used to go down to the same club, which was a great club. I mean, it was some of the best players, people who would later turn up in other bands. The band that I like best, the guitarist, I mean, Zoot Money's Big Roll Band. And Zoot Money never did particularly well after the I suppose about 1970, because what happened was a lot of these guys had been doing this really good, heavy R&B, most of it keyboard based. They all started taking acid, and it absolutely destroyed the bands. I mean, it was horrible. Where they'd been really belting it out, you know, great R&B stuff. Mose Allison stuff, you know, Otis Redding. I mean, just really, really good stuff of the early 60s. Low battery, it says, but I think I can probably go on for another 10% remaining. Anyway, sorry, your face is now saying low battery, so I'm sorry about that. I'm sure your battery is perfectly high, but anyway, yeah, and so you know they went from doing all this stuff to dropping acid and becoming, well, very introspective, shall we say, and no longer with any of the funk that they'd had. But Ginger Baker was in one of those bands, Graham Bond organization. Graham killed himself. But Graham really thought I had a black sword, and that I, you know, and he was after me to try and tell him the secret of forging the black sword.
Wow, you're blowing my mind right now. I knew he was into the occult, but
yeah, well, he was into some pretty murky stuff, you know, all that Aleister Crowley stuff as well. And I think that's how Ginger, when I first met Ginger, I'd seen Ginger on stage with Graham, but I didn't know him the way that I knew some of the other people. And Ginger, it turned out almost all of these guys were reading my stuff at the time. So that's the kind of entry I had into rock and roll, really without wanting to be part of. I mean, I was happy to be in the audience, I didn't necessarily want to perform. And I got to performing as people realized I had, you know, previously performed. And I do have a fairly good blues voice, so I can do a lot of that stuff. But anyway, that's
we're gonna have to talk more about Graham Bond next time, because that just blew my mind. But I wanted you to, if you wanted to give a quick update on the Conan Elric comic book. I just wanted to show here that this is the original, of course, of their original, the first time that they've appeared together.
Yeah, I still haven't agreed to do it. They haven't. All I'm asking, I want to know how much they want and how much they'll pay, and they won't tell me. And I mean, I really need to know that. Or Linda needs to know it, because she's pretty firm about me getting paid for things, because I used to do things for nothing, and she doesn't let me do that anymore. Well, as we get older, I suppose we can't. But yeah, I'm still planning it. I mean, I still plan to do it, but I haven't got a contract or anything for that particular project.
All right. Well, our hour, Linda's hour might be coming up here a little bit, and I always want to make sure that I'm in good graces with the missus. So if
me too. Me too.
You want to give any final words to anybody out there, any fans out there?
Well, I'm hoping that people will buy this this book. I don't know whether I can't. No, I don't know. It's not showing.
Mother London. Yeah,
Mother London. Yeah. It's just come out. They've just reissued it. The same people who reissued the new Elric editions, and I'm very proud of this book. I mean, this actually has a lot of that history in it too. Notting Hill at that time, Ladbroke Grove at that time. It starts in 1940, but it goes through into the 1980s, through the 60s and into the 80s. I don't think Lem is mentioned in that one. He's mentioned in the other one, King of the City. He's quite mentioned quite a bit in King of the City. But it's just a novel about London. It's not really a fantasy novel, but it was shortlisted for the Whitbread Prize. It actually won the Whitbread Prize. I was phoned up and told that it had won the Whitbread Prize, which I didn't even know it was I didn't know it was supposed to be, in the running. And this guy phones up and he says, "Oh, it's great. We won the Whitbread Prize." He's one of the judges. Oh, yeah, we're going. We're now down to 5%, I think. Anyway, and so
we'll make it.
I said to Linda, apparently I won the Whitbread Prize, and we were both surprised. And then the next day he called and he said that a friend of Salman Rushdie's had said Salman would never forgive me if I didn't vote for him, and changed their vote, got somebody else to change their vote, and suddenly I was second rather than first, and I hadn't won the Whitbread Prize. So I think Rushdie would have. I mean, I'm glad Rushdie won it. He's a good writer, but I don't think he needed it quite as. He would have made me a lot more financially comfortable if I'd won that prize at the time. But sure. There it is. It's a book I'm very fond of. It's quite a, I don't know. It's a sort of loving book. It's a warm book.
Well, I'm definitely looking forward to the new book. And
okay, well, it's coming out pretty soon, I think. If it is not now, it's on Amazon now, so I suppose it must be published. Though you can't trust Amazon, well, for anything really. But I'm hoping it's okay. Anyway, I won't go on about that. It's been good talking to you. I'm sorry we only have an hour. We only have 5% battery remaining.
That's all right. This is the eternal tales of Michael Moorcock. We'll do another one of these in the next couple of months or so.
Yeah,
and I'll
sure.
ask you more about Graham Bond.
Yeah, well, I'll try. I haven't got a lot to say about Graham, except I'm sorry he killed himself. That was pretty bad. But yeah, okay. Let's do that, and I'll try and keep. Remember the narrative this time, and tell you new stuff, and not repeat old stuff like an old geezer.
No, it's all good. Well, I just have one last thing to say, and that's I wanted to end the show by saying I dedicate the show to all my old friends at RPG Central, especially my dear friend Jeff Francis, the Knights of the Prime Material Plane, the Dreaming City Fellowship, my little sister Lisa, and of course my soulmate Wendy. Remember, look to the stars, carry that torch of enlightenment, and strive to be a disciple of rock and roll in the Brotherhood of Orpheus. Peace.
Peace. Peace and
right
love.
On.
Yeah.
Right on.
Cheers. See you again soon.
It's been a big day. If I can get some more place in this cold, that'd be Oh, we got there, baby.